Hey, welcome to the Christ-Centered Chiropractic weekly webinar and discussion. This is a big one. Every time I work with a client, which is, 30, 40 times a week, a lot of what it comes down to is, are you able to close the tough cases? So this particular session, this training is on closing expensive cases. These are the 3 rules to doing so. And I also put it this way, because I hate the term closing. Obviously, we're in healthcare, we're doctors, we just want to save lives, but there's money involved, and oftentimes it's a lot of money as compared to it being for free, as people often think it would be if we took their insurance, or if insurance really did that. So this is something that everyone needs. There's a book that I'm going to write it one day. I've talked about it a lot. It's how to sell something everyone needs, but nobody wants. And that's really a lot of what we end up in a discussion about with a patient, is the fact that you absolutely need this, even though you don't want it for whatever reason. You're in denial. You don't want to put the time and effort in. You don't want to spend the money. So you'd like to see the results, maybe, but the reality is that there's an investment in time and money. There's trust in the process, and we've got to be good at, quote unquote, selling it. So these are always tough because, I hate these terms: sell, close. These all sound like it's business or that we're manipulating people, but we're not. We're saving lives. And so it goes back to some of the old metaphors we used to use, like the burning building, that, you smell smoke, you're at the top of the hotel, you're on floor 18, and you realize that you're the only one who smells it. There's people on 18 floors about to die unless you get them out of the room and they rush out the building. But as you knock on the first door, you say to somebody, "Hey, wake up, get out of the building, it's on fire." And they say, "Prove it." What do? You got to be better at closing it, and you got to keep moving on. And so this is kind of the same thing. We've got a lot of people to save, but everybody's sort of asking, consciously or unconsciously, prove it. So I'm going to go through these 3 rules, and I want to use some common scenarios. And so I'm actually just going to use, because this is such a common situation, just yesterday. So on Wednesdays, that's my big clinic days. That's when I go to one of my clinics here in Florida, and I'm just seeing patient after patient, and it's just a lot of doing consults and closings. That's what I do most of the day on Wednesdays in Citrus County. And so just yesterday, there was 3 very common scenarios. One, the very first guy in the door says, I live with my mom, and this is somebody in his 60s. I live with my mom. I've ruined my life. I have no money. So unless this is fully covered by my Medicaid, I'm not going to do it. I can't do it. I don't have any money. So that's scenario number 1. Scenario number 2 is a woman who comes in and she has Medicare with United Healthcare secondary. So of course she's thinking this is completely free. So I'm here and do it. Hey, I hope you do millions of dollars of services on me because it's all free. And that's what she's expecting. I'm going to pull out these 2 pieces of plastic and there won't be any charge whatsoever. So that's the second scenario. And the third one, which is not as common as you might realize it is, which is the person who he's just sort of like, I'm fine. And I remember they talked about this in chiropractic college when you were interviewing people as part of this long consult they would have you do at the clinic in school, about people who'd say they're fine. So, okay, we're going to go through, your problems today. Let me know what's going on. My back's a little sore. But as they taught you to dig, you'd find out, they have, severe digestive disorders. They get migraine headaches, cancer, all these things that are going on. And yet they said they're fine. When I've done some screenings, like I did a screening in a community that was mostly older people. It was just like a place where they played tennis and pickleball and hung out. And I did a screening there. And one person after another said they were fine, said they were healthy. They were filling out the health surveys without checking off any boxes of any symptoms. I'm like, this is impossible. This has to be all people with problems at the age group that I was dealing with. So I started digging in. I said, well, so are you taking any medications? Oh yeah, I'm on 14. So how are you fine? Like, why did you check none of the boxes? Well, because I'm taking all my medications for it. So I'm fine. And it turns out this entire group whether they collectively agreed to approach me this way or somebody had taught them this, that as long as you're taking your drugs for all your problems, you're fine. So this guy I'm talking about yesterday who said he was fine has a little bit of a shoulder issue. So that's all he said, a little bit of a shoulder issue. So it turns out his range of motion, he can't even get anywhere near 90 degrees. Never mind, no way. He can't do anything with his face or head with his arm because he can't get his hand up that far. And he's quit doing everything he loves to do because he's just given up on the shoulder. I found out he spent a week in the hospital with what they couldn't figure out was either a stroke or a seizure. He left there. They gave him a bunch of drugs, never did figure out what it was. They had scheduled him for a CAT scan that never happened. So they had dropped the ball on that, and a number of other issues in his legs and his knees sometimes completely give out and they're killing him. So point being, you've got this third case where they're in denial. And that's important as we go through these three rules to understand, why that's so important to get. You have to understand this concept. So in psychology, we know that there's underlying questions that the person has about your discussion with them. And one of those questions is, do I really need this? Another question is, can they really help me? Even if they've heard you've helped others, well, they helped others, but I don't know that it would work for me. Is it really that valuable? There's a lot of these underlying questions that put them into a sense of denial. And just the fact that people minimize in general, especially men. Again, back to chiropractic college, they taught us about all of the men each year that die in the bathroom. And so what happens there, if you don't remember that education, this is, right in the text, they talk about this, that when a lot of men are having a heart attack, they just go to the bathroom, wash their face, look in the mirror, just deny it's even going on and die in there, rather than actually having done something about the symptoms. And of course, in many of those cases, the symptoms had been there for a while and they just thought, I'll be fine. So this I'll be fine mentality. I've already tried everything. I'm already doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. This is no big deal. It's just going to go away. That's killing these tough cases too, especially, again, we're talking about right now, closing expensive cases. So if we're talking about a $10,000 plus case, a $5,000 case, a $20,000 or $30,000 case, and you've got somebody still in denial thinking they're fine, I've just got a little bit of a shoulder thing, they're never signing up for a $10,000 case if they're still there. So let's go through these three rules here. So rule number one, and this like, for example, with that Medicare person. So rule number one is this, that first of all, we've got to set things up, and we talk about this in our portal, we call proximity. Because the first rule is we got to create urgency, and urgency comes from proximity. So just by the sheer fact that you would evaluate a person and say, schedule them for days away or a week away, we lose the urgency. And so we must create urgency. So this Medicare person, they're like, well, okay, I'll come back next week and then you can tell me what you found. And I know that by the sheer structure, by not having proximity, there's no way I'd maintain that urgency. And this is somebody, again, Medicare, United Healthcare Secondary, she's thinking it's going to be free. So when I go through her case, I have to immediately be in shock. And so a lot of this interesting, it's just how you say it is part of it. Like, my gosh, you've had this going on. So in her case, she has a bowel disorder and she didn't like what the doctors were telling her. So it's been going on for 30 years and she's in and out of doctor's offices, never likes what they say. So just really doesn't do anything. So I'm like, so this has been getting worse and worse and worse. Your entire digestive system has been degenerating and getting sicker and sicker for nearly 30 years. And you've never addressed what's causing the problem. So you've got to create that urgency. So we're going to look at your spine and nerve system today, do our other evaluations, and you need to be back tomorrow because we have to discover what's going on, tell you what we found, and get to fixing it before it's too late. So just my reaction, my shock, my awe, and the fact that in proximity, I've created urgency. All I'd have to say is, oh my gosh, do everything I said about my reaction to it and say, okay, we'll see you next week. I lose all the urgency. It's now just categorized as any other doctor that's been sort of just generally looking into it for 30 years. We lose the fact that we've got to do something about it now. Second part to that, as I alluded to, is what I call past, present, future. So we mentioned, in any case, somebody could just say their neck's been sore, and we point to the fact that, well, I mean, it looks like you played sports, you've been in accidents, obviously you're 40 years old, do a lot of damage to your neck over that period of time, including just being bent over your computer and your cell phone. You know, you've got 15, 20 years of damage by the time something is hurting. Things don't hurt right away. So we've got long-standing damage, and I get them to confirm, and that's the past. So I say, so since you've been letting this degenerate and get worse and worse and worse for 15, 20 years, what does it look like now? This is an important part of creating urgency, because most people are only thinking about the present. The present, by the way, new research has shown is just this 7 seconds. So somebody's just thinking about their neck and how it is in the context of 7 seconds. And in the context of 7 seconds, no big deal. It's sore. I can deal with it. How bad could a 7-second-old problem be? And that's where they're at. And so when you're losing people, that's because it's a 7-second-old problem. I'm not worried about it. But when it's a 15, 20, 30-year-old problem, like in the case of this lady I was talking about, where is it presently? Where is it now? I mean, it's been degenerating 15 years. Where is it now? Oh my God, now is really bad. So now it's not 7 seconds, it's 15 years of bad, not 7 seconds of bad. Hopefully you're catching that. It's a big distinction. So then future. So if you were to let this go for 3 more months, because suddenly if you do this right, 3 months is an eternity. In 3 more months, where's it going to be then? And their response, if you've done this properly, is going to be, man, it's going to be really bad. So what if you left this? I mean, it's a 20-year-old issue. What if you left this like another year? And at that point, what you're really looking for is somebody's going to say, I'd be dead or incapacitated. In the case I was mentioning earlier of the guy that lives at home and has no money, and so if it costs anything, he can't do it. In his case, when I said, where will you be in a year? He goes, I'll be incapacitated. And I said, well, what would that look like? He goes, right now, I said, I live at home, so I take care of my aging mother. It's an old house. I have to do a lot of work there. And he's a motorcyclist. And so he that's his only thing he does for fun, fixing up his motorcycle and driving around the state with his friends. So he's like, all that would be gone. I couldn't take care of my mom. I couldn't function. I'll be incapacitated. I won't be able to fix my bike or ride around. My life would be over because I'd be dead. So when we created an urgency through that, but then that leads to the second point, which is the reality. So if they don't come to this reality that if they don't correct it, there's dire circumstances. So this reality are the consequences. So that urgency, past, present, future with proximity as the structure leads to reality, that this is the reality if we don't do something. Because we're going to have to constantly circle back to reality. So the reality is the cost to their life and the economic cost. Like in the case of the guy with the shoulder, like, well, where's that headed? I mean, what's that surgery look like? He goes, well, they're already talking about a shoulder replacement. Like, well, what is that like? What's the rehab on that? How long are you out for that? You mentioned you still like to stay active. Would you be able to be active ever again if you did that? It's like, I don't want to do it. So there's this cost to their life, but then what does it cost financially? Like that's got to be a $50,000 to $100,000 between the surgery, the rehab, 2 years of coming back from that, the drugs. Oh, I don't take drugs. Well, you'll be on drugs after a surgery. They'll be giving you opioids. I heard they kill you. They do kill you, but that's what you'll be on. That it's excruciating pain that would have replaced your shoulder. You can't just pop an aspirin. So cost to life, but then cost of money. What's the cost of this? Because we've got to contrast as we get into this last piece and we start talking about actually presenting the plan. We got to make sure we're talking about the financial aspect of doing this medically, or what happens catastrophically and what that means financially if we let this go on. So we've got to get to the reality, the cost of life and the cost of further decay and what that even means financially. So that's a really, really big one. So as I get into the context of this, that's the fun. So it's urgency, reality, and context. So the context is always we compare what we're doing to the alternatives that we've been mentioning, what it means to let it go, keep decaying, the financial aspects of it, what it does to your life. We've got all that to contrast it to versus getting it fixed. So we'll start with the guy who said he has no money, can't pay anything. So first, me and my staff, we have to be anchored to the fact that everybody has money. They all can find the money. If you're going to die, if your life's about to be over, you'll find the money. If we don't have the urgency, if we're not in touch with reality, if we've missed the first 2 points, then yeah, I'll tell you I don't have the money, or I thought my insurance would cover it. I'll go somewhere else. But if we've done that well, then they have the money. So I never think, oh, they don't have the money. And if somebody doesn't start, and even, because in my care plans can be $10,000, $20,000. But if somebody doesn't start because they say they don't have $20,000, I never say, well, what could we do? They didn't have $20,000. I know that I needed to have presented this more. Remember, this is all about the 3 rules of closing expensive cases. It comes down to how good a job did I do closing it. Never has to do with whether or not they had the money, because they'll find it if I did my job. So getting back to this guy said he has no money. So I present the plan. And in his case, this is a $3,200 chiropractic plan. It's not one of our regenerative plans that could be, again, upwards of 5 or multiple 5 figures. So $3,200, because listen, he goes, if it was $10, I can't do it. And so I just said, you have to do it. Well, I don't have the money. Well, where are you going to get it? You have to do it. There's not another alternative. You said yourself, you'd be dead. Your life would be over. I mean, if not doing it is not taking care of your mom, not doing it is not being able to care for the home, not doing it is that bike's gone. There's no more anything. You're just incapacitated, laying in bed. And as you said, you'd be dead. You have to do it. So he goes, was there a payment plan? I said, yeah, you can do up to 6 payments. So you have to do it. So just let's sit you down with our front desk and she will figure out what you need to do to make those 6 payments happen. So they did. He's actually gotten 2 adjustments, walked in like, he goes, I am a brand new person. He goes, this is unbelievable. He goes, I can't believe I almost didn't do it. And so again, this is the poorest guy you'll ever meet. This guy, he's got a backstory. He has 8 children he's never been married, all different moms. He's a real, this is the end stage of being a biker. He's lived the life. Everything's been ruined, economically decimated. And yet he found the money because he has to do it. And because of that being my commitment and my staff's commitment. The next one I'll talk about what we call circling back. So the Medicare person with a secondary, well, it's covered. And so her case is over $10,000. She goes, okay, yeah, well, it's covered. I go, none of it's covered. She's like, what do you mean none of it's covered? I'm like, yeah, this, and I explain, go through I'm not going to do that in this particular training, but we go through the whole insurance thing and why it isn't covered. Well, I need to go somewhere it's covered. So here's how I presented the case. So this is the whole point of context. So the retail on this case, when I gave it to her, it was not $10,000. It was $19,700. It was the total plan. And so I said to her, and so that's when I said, when I presented, it's $19,700, and I stop. And so she explodes with all the stuff about coverage, and I thought it'd be covered, and are you sure? And maybe I can go somewhere else. And we go through all of that. And I say, listen, I know it's not covered. So here's the good news for people on a care plan. If you follow the plan, if you sign up for the plan today, for people on a plan, it's only $10,400. So it's $9,300 that we give you off because of this challenge. She stops, looks at her husband and says, I'm going to do this. That is great. Gives me a huge hug and thanks me for what I just did for her, and paid over $10,000. So it was in contrast to again, the hundreds of thousands of dollars this was going to cost her in terms of economics, the decimation of her life that was going to occur if we don't do anything, the fact that she's let this go 30 years and what's going to happen if this continues, again, understanding the past and the present and the future. So it's everything working out that way. And so in circling back, had she said no, I simply would have circled back and pointed out past, present, future again, and where we are right now to keep it. And I keep circling back till she would say yes. And again, in this case, just the sheer fact that she was saving $9,300, which we would say $9,300, she was thankful. We didn't have to do all that. Final case, again, that we're talking about, the guy in denial. So in that case, you have to go from minimizing to maximizing. And so this, again, has to do with context. I said, so you realize the hand is supposed to go all the way up. You're supposed to have full range of motion until I've got a long, I could use some treatment myself right now. Too much wrestling and heavy weights. So I got I'm not all the way there. I got to tilt my head to cheat. So I said, so you're not even part of the way there. I'm like, do you realize, how bad this has gotten? Not to mention, I work through all the symptoms. You've got your arteries are decaying in your legs, your knees are arthritic, and you have some sort of undiagnosed brain damage that's caused either a stroke or for you to have some level of a seizure. And now you're taking a bunch of drugs with no actual diagnosis. Like, that's the situation you're in. So we're circling back to take somebody from minimizing to maximizing. And you realize with that shoulder that it's decaying. So there's going to be a point where you can't just stop what you're doing is just stopping everything. So he just listed all the things he used to do that he doesn't do anymore. Like, so you're talking about it getting to a point where you're just going to be sitting in a chair with your body fully decayed, including your brain, and doing zero. Like, is that the life you want? Where, at that point, you're probably sitting in a nursing home somewhere, paying $10,000 a month in cash to live there, as your body deteriorates. I know that's not what you want. And he had said that they love being active, but he's been slowly but surely dropping different activities. So the cost is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. The cost to your life is to be living a life completely opposed to the way you want to live it, and suffering immensely. And you said you don't like to take any drugs. I mean, the amount of drugs you're going to keep ending up on is going to just keep mounting in that situation. We cannot go that route. Do you understand? And so I took him from this major minute. I mean, it started with, again, a little shoulder thing, yet he had all these advanced serious health conditions. So I had to maximize it. So people minimize. So we talk about the context of things. Part of that is their context is it's a nominal issue. This is the kind of guy that goes in the bathroom and dies. I maximize it. And then we circle back to, again, going through the reality and the cost to move them to making a decision. I think more than anything in these three cases, and the reason we're able to close all three successfully. And again, to me, the important thing was not the money. It's we're going to save their life. I mean, this is going to be fun. It's already fun with the guy living with his mom that's ruined his life, because he's just very thankful. He thought his life was over at this point, and it's now practically just beginning. And so that's the exciting part. But obviously, I know everybody has the money. I know if they understand this, they're going to do it. And so does my staff. We don't ever take the patient's response as a reasonable excuse. Our purpose is to close them and save their lives. And there's a definition of purpose, which is the purpose is the result. So we're committed to the result, which is our purpose, and not letting them out that door. So a lot of this, hopefully you saw, just it's an attitude. It's a commitment by me and my team. And it's just a belief that people do have the money. If they really understand, they're going to do it. So hopefully, you got a lot out of this today. If you understand the nuances of this, if your cases are a couple $1,000s, again, my lowest case is $3,200 for just the straight chiropractic. As we get into other tools that we utilize in regenerative services, it's 5 figures, multiple 5 figures. But we close $3,200 to $10,000 to $20,000 with just as much frequency and success because of the rules we explained today. Appreciate you all. Remember, this is for the glory of God. This is to serve the people He loves and to save their lives. And together we change the world. If it sounds tough, just remember, with God, all things are possible.